Each new generation of iPhone comes with at least one meaningful change, but the 16 is the first that came with nothing of substance, an upgrade that was a pure waste. Each iPhone promises us something along Apple's slogan of Think Different. This gave birth to Siri, removal of the headphone jack, and standardizing USB-C across all devices. The iPhone 17 is coming soon, which makes you think of the phone Apple released last year. The iPhone 16 promised to bring Apple intelligence into our palms, but as we all know, that never came, and perhaps not for a while still. It was being sold on the future promise of AI, a promise that is rumored to be rolled out as late as when the iPhone 18 will be released. I never upgraded to a 16 and I'm glad I didn't. With my 15 Pro Max, I got all the features worth anything anyway without having to fork up extra money, or at least I think so. And yes, I realize most people upgrade their phones every 2 to 3 years, maybe even longer. I will talk about this more in a little while and explain why 16 was still a garbage update. And to properly unpack the dumpster fire that is the iPhone 16, we're gonna have to rewind a little bit. Ever since the iPhone 6, the jump between each iPhone has been getting smaller and smaller. And as any company gets big enough, they will start to understand what largely works and they will stick with it. Each new feature will either stick or will teach them something new. Let me tell you about some iPhones from the past that have helped establish a trend. Between the iPhone 6 and 5S, we got a substantial screen upgrade. The base model went from 4 inches to 4.7 inches diagonal. The Plus was added as a new option too, which was even bigger. Steve Jobs used to believe that phones shouldn't be too big or people won't be able to use them. He said, and I quote, "You can't get your hand around it, no one's going to buy that." Under Tim Cook's leadership, Apple realized that that is not necessarily true and they made a change that stuck and has led to phone sizes becoming bigger and bigger nearly a decade later. And then moving on to the 6S, which brought 3D touch, something that I used to love, but something they also got rid of eventually. I used to love it, but in retrospect, it was slow and it was unreliable. Apple eventually decided it wasn't worth it and switched to haptic touch in the 10R, which is just more reliable. It also helped save on tech components, bringing down the cost, etc. Then came the iPhone 7, the infamous iPhone 7. They removed the headphone jack in that phone, something that everyone hated initially. Apple didn't reverse it because barely anyone misses it now, and it did help establish an industry standard. And then we're gonna skip over the iPhone 8 because the 10 got released right next to it, and I don't even really have to talk about why 10 was a big trendsetter. The home button was released, the gestures changed, the control center you used to swipe up, now it was from the top right. The Face ID replaced Touch ID, and it just led to a new design that is being used till this very day. Then came the iPhone 10R that told Apple that people wanted something in this price range, something that is a toned down version of the phones that they're releasing. The R line replaced the base models and the existing models were promoted to be called Pros. The iPhone 11 came with the ultra wide lens in the base model. The iPhone 12 OLED displays all across the models, and they rolled out MagSafe, one of the best things that has existed in iPhone since they started, in my opinion. The accessories, the charging, everything is so great. Even standby that got rolled out eventually. All across the board, amazing. Then came the iPhone 13, which basically only rolled out the cinematic mode, which is niche but useful, I suppose, and it stuck. The iPhone 14, but I'm going to talk about the pros. The dynamic island was rolled out, which blurred the line between hardware and software, made the notch less annoying, and it was an overall useful thing since you could see the status and you could tap on it and it didn't feel like the notch was there restricting your touch. Amazing, amazing. iPhone 15, that brought USB-C and the action button in the pros. It replaced the ringer slider, which wasn't worth a lot anyway to a lot of people because people that would keep their phones on silent just left them on silent, and people who didn't leave it on silent, well, they used to use it once in a while, I suppose, in meetings and stuff. But yeah, some people love the action button, some people have forgotten about it. But at the very least, it is a modifiable button and not just stuck to it being a ringer. You can just make it your ringer button still. Very good. As you may have noticed, I didn't list out every single thing, not even every single major thing that came out in the past iPhones. But since I'm going to rip the 16 a new one, let me list out multiple things that mean something to the average user. Let's start with the fact that the screen size went from 6.1 inches to 6.3. Then the camera control button was added. Ultra wide was changed to 48 megapixels. The photographic styles pad was added. Visual intelligence was rolled out. The iPhone 16 had a slightly higher battery life and charging speed through MagSafe. They rolled out 4K at 120 FPS, and then there were some smaller things like one nit brightness, Wi-Fi 7 versus 6E, etc., etc. But out of all of these, what's good, and even if it is, how much of it together justifies a new phone? Let's just go through the list one more time. The screen size going from 6.1 to 6.3 is not significant enough to warrant a new phone altogether. The camera control button, in theory, is a pretty good thing, but it's not placed properly, something I'll talk about a little later. The 48 megapixel ultra wide is an awesome thing to roll out, but again, I would argue that that by itself is not that big of a thing. The style pads thing is dumb and it's software logged mostly anyway. If the 15 Pro can handle AI stuff that's on the 16, it can also handle the styles pad. They choose not to roll it out, I think. Visual intelligence came out on the 15 Pros anyway, so that's not an exclusive. Battery improvements are modest at best. They're like a couple hours here and there. 4K at 120 FPS is great though, which means 8K might be coming to the iPhone soon. Then the smaller things, they're again good quality of life updates, nothing that are game changers or anything. Coming to the point that many of you are probably itching to make in the comments, most people don't upgrade their phones every year, and to be honest, I agree with you. Like I said, the 16 is an incremental update, but so are most phones that come out. The real problem is that so many of the small upgrades that were promised alongside the phone never came. The average person probably wouldn't have cared about the new Siri being a little more useful or the other AI gimmicky stuff. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have either. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get the features that were promised alongside the cost of the phone. And on the other hand, since these features never came out, Apple didn't get any real user feedback. They don't know what would have been liked about the new Siri or what AI features are generally being used, which means that these features are going to be tested out in a future phone or in future iOS updates, which essentially makes this whole year and this whole 16 lineup a waste. The Apple Intelligence stuff never got fully rolled out. And what little did, it came out on the 15 Pros anyway, so what did the 16 lineup achieve really? For a few months after the 16 got rolled out, I thought the visual intelligence stuff is 16 exclusive, but then eventually my 15 Pro got it too. I used to think it was exclusive because it was tied to the camera control button, but now if I go to the control center, I can still access visual intelligence on my 15 Pro. I mean, it's good that they're not gatekeeping software features as long as, my phone can handle it, but no AI features seems to be 16 exclusive at this point. I will give Apple one thing though, they probably got a lot of user data on the Apple control button and its usage. A button that seems universally hated, honestly. It is placed in a way to cater to both portrait and landscape users, but in doing so, it's failing at both. It is lower than where most people's thumb would naturally rest in portrait mode and pushed inwards relative to where most people would hold their phone in landscape mode. It is an ergonomic nightmare, and I'm sure Apple knows that now. But I'm sure they'll keep trying to make it better, and at some point it'll either get useful or they'll phase it out, making an excuse saying something along the lines of, or we replace it with this one feature that we think you'll like more, and to make space for it, we have to get rid of camera control or whatever. So one side of the coin is the consumer was lied to, and the other is not enough learnings came through the 16 lineup to dictate future releases. In a lot of ways, some other iPhones were a wasted upgrade too, but there's some nuance to it. Like the iPhone 13 cinematic mode and slightly smaller notch were functionally small quality of life updates and not selling points really. Same for 14's action mode and crash detection. As for the iPhone 15's USB-C port, that was one of the most awesome updates ever since the iPhone 10's look refresh. But that too was kind of forced onto Apple from the EU, so they get half marks here, I'd say. The point is, at the very least, 13, 14, 15, whatever their shortcomings, whatever features were promised came out on them. At the end of it all, I know Apple's not going to skip a year because they didn't have anything major to release, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to talk about it either. They messed up, and everyone does eventually. Hopefully the iPhone 17 is a banger and makes us forget about the disaster that was 16, especially because I plan to buy the 17. Get subscribed for my thoughts on it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. PS out.